about the two boys. What were their names that were at odds with each other? Jacob and Esau. They were twins. And which one was the older twin by maybe a few minutes? Esau. Okay, Esau was the older. How did that division further show itself? Not just between the two boys, but somewhere else. The parents furthered that division. Yeah, they played favorites. Who favored Esau? Isaac favored Esau. Who favored Jacob? Mother did. And they were completely different in nature, weren't they? What did we find out about Esau? Big and hairy, and he liked being outside, right? Okay, I'm not sure about the big side, but he was hairy and red. At least we know that part. We automatically assume he was probably big because he was an outdoorsman. What do we know about Jacob? He was a mama's boy. He liked soft and gentle. Look at all this stuff you all are reading into the account. We get that from our pastor. There we go. He liked to cook. He liked to cook, and he liked to dwell in tents. He was a homebody, right? And liked to do things that, it appears, at least from our perspective, to be more not so manly, all right? That seems to be the apparent look. Okay. All right. So what we want to do today, if you remember, there was a prophecy given in the that was given about these two boys. Specifically, Rebekah got the prophecy, but I'm sure Isaac knew about it as well. What was the prophecy? No, that's Abraham. The older would serve the younger. The older would serve the younger. Now, it does fit into that prophecy of Abraham. How does that fit? The prophecy that was given to Abraham, or the blessing that was given to Abraham. How does it fit together? How do you piece those two pieces together? Abraham is going to be the source of blessing to where? Or his family is going to be the source of blessing to what? All nations. And we know specifically who's that comes out of Abraham that's that blessing. Jesus Christ. And then, what else do we learn about Isaac and Jacob and his line? Where's he coming out of? Or where does he fit into that plan? He fits into the line. Remember the lineage we had last week? He fits into the line of blessing, while Esau is going to be removed out of that line of blessing. So the idea of him being the ruler over Esau does have a temporal and maybe a yet futural viewpoint, but ultimately it's speaking about the fact that it's through him that the line of promise is coming through, right? Does that make sense? Okay. Now, I want to deal with some other preconceived ideas that you all already got. But how old, we know what happens in the next chapter where we talk about Jacob stealing the blessing, which is what starts chapter 27. So I want you to be ready there to open up. We need to think of some ideas of how old do we automatically assume. We think, Isaac's so old and, he's an old guy, but we would say Esau's this age and Jacob, obviously they're the same age, or this age, and Rebekah's that age. How old would you consider they are at the point where Jacob steals the blessing, where the two boys are? How old would you think they are? Huh? He says in their 20s. Anybody else agree? Disagree? Have a different opinion? How old does it say that Isaac will be when he finally dies? Anybody know? If you go to Genesis 35:28, you'll find out how old he is when he dies. 35:28. What's it say? 104 score years. What's 104 score mean? 180. So he lives a long time, doesn't he? Again, we're still looking at right after Noah's flood time, where people are still living long ages, but it's not near as long as they were before. 180. This passage in Genesis 27 takes us back 43 years, okay? And you just have to trust me on that one. If you want to do some chronology, I'll let you look at that throughout the week on that. So it takes us about 43 years earlier. Now, how old was Isaac when the boys were born? Anybody remember how old he was? Genesis 25:26 tells us that he was 60 years old. 60 years old when the boys were born. Okay, and if we're let's go from 137, which is what 43 years earlier would be, minus 60. What number do we get to find out how old the boys are now? One more decade. 77 years old. So these boys are 77 years old when we're looking at this. Go out and go hunt the deer and bring it back because I'm about to die, and then Rebecca with her little plan. So we're not talking about young little boys. We're talking about aged men that are in this process, and this is still going on. Still going on, okay? What do we learn? Let's go ahead and start reading the passage. We're going to split out Genesis 27, 1 to 29, and then we're going to pick up Genesis 27, 30 in the later part of our lesson here today. So Genesis 27, 1 to 29. And let's get it, verses 1 through 5, okay, 6 through 10, okay, 11 through 15, okay, 16 through 20, 16 through 20, 21 through 25. I want to give that a single. I need one who will read. You want to do it? Okay, 21 to 25, and then I need 26, 27, 28, 28, okay, 29, sold, right there. Okay, gotcha. All right, Genesis 27, so be ready. On your... Okay, and then 21 to 25. Daniel. 29. Pages sticking together. Okay, all right. So we've taken out hopefully a little bit of our preconceived ideas. They are not young people in this story at this point, are they? Every one of them is old. At this point, we'd say Isaac is about 137 years old. And you remember, he doesn't die till he's 180, but he thinks he's about to die. And I don't know if he's exaggerating or if he's got a sickness that he doesn't know that he's going to recover from. We don't know. We're not given those details. But there is something we can draw out of this. What do we know about Isaac at this point? Not only that he's old, but what else? Something to do with his eyes. Yeah, he can't see. He can't see. He's lost his vision at this point. Who does he call? Esau, because he thinks he's about to die. And what does he tell Esau he wants him to do? Say it. Go hunt. Get yourself some venison, good old deer steak, and then prepare it for me, and then I'm going to do what? I'm going to bless you. Now, hold on a second. What does that mean, to bless him? It kind of takes us back to what we talked about last week. You remember how we talked about Esau selling his birthright? Now, they're not exactly one and the same, a blessing and a birthright, though they do oftentimes appear together. They are not necessarily the same. Blessing, sometimes when we think about blessings, we can talk about how they are just a word of affirmation. And then at times you'll see in the Bible they are actually prophetic, especially in this time. We'll see that they actually act as prophecy. Does anybody remember an account where somebody was trying to curse the nation of Israel and it never worked out? What was it? Balaam, yes. And he was hired by Balak, the king of Moab, to curse the children of Israel. And every time he cursed them or intended to curse them, he ended up doing what? Blessing them. And it was actually, some of it was prophetic that he was saying that did come to pass. He actually gives a prophecy about the Messiah in one of those times he blesses. So we do see that blessing does have sometimes a prophetic nature to it. And it appears that they understood that it did, that it had certain prophecy that when they would speak, this is what's going to happen, okay? And this also tells us about how Isaac feels about God's plan right now. What did God say to Rebekah? And I'm sure Isaac knew about it. That the elder will serve the younger. He knew who was supposed to be treated as the firstborn or the one who had the firstborn rights. And it wasn't Esau. It was to be Jacob. But again, he favors Esau, and he is against really Jacob taking that. And the reason why we are told is because he said he loved his venison. He loved the steak. That's what it says. I mean, that's what the motive is told why he does what he does. Now, at this point, Rebekah overhears what's being said. This isn't a family affair. This isn't a family meeting where this is being discussed. It's almost intended to be private, it appears. But Rebekah hears. It's easy to hear through tent walls. You can't put up too much insulation between those, right? So she hears what Isaac is saying, and what does she immediately set out to do? Yeah, she wants to flip it around. So how are they going to go about doing it? Give me food-wise. How are they going to solve the food issue? 2 small goats instead of venison. Now let me ask you a question. Do you think he brought the full 2 small goats to feed that guy? Why just get 1 goat? Maybe. Possible, just only taking the loin. But even then, that's a lot of meat. For if all the guy's going to eat is just one little plate full of meat. Do you think the guy might have been a big dude, Isaac? If he loved Esau's venison, is it possible that he liked food? I mean, you got to feed that guy 2 small goats in one meal. And I don't know what you're taking off the goat, how much you're putting on his plate off of those 2 goats, but that's a lot to eat. And he said, well, we're trying to fool him. Well, why do you have to fool him? Just take the plate. He can't tell whether you got more than 1 goat. I mean, you realize that? He can't see. He doesn't know that you got all this meat hanging around here somewhere. So you just think about what he's eating. What are you saying? Maybe so. But even then, do you need a venison loin to eat for one meal? Do you get what I'm saying here? This guy loves his beef, his wild beef, right? He loves his meat. Might still have good teeth at that point. I don't know. I just think it's funny, and I'm going to show you in a minute here, the blessing that he gives whom he thinks is Esau has nothing to do with the Abrahamic promise at all. It has everything to do with, if you notice, food and wine and power. Sounds like he's interested in food and power. That's really it. It has nothing to do with what the Abrahamic blessing was about, except one little line. Bless those that bless you and curse those that curse you. But it has nothing to do with, in thee shall all the families of the earth be blessed. That's not till we get to where Jacob flees that we see God reiterates that promise again. All right, so just kind of get the idea that this guy is, that's my thought. I'm just reading in between the lines. That's my thought about this guy. He is completely fleshly consumed, okay? So that's the first thing. Go get the goats. Second thing, what does he got to do to deceive? He can still hear and he can still smell, so they got to overcome those 2 issues. He can touch, so he's going to probably touch. So he says, put on goat skin and cover it on your arms and cover it on your neck, right? Now that's pretty hairy. If you got that much hair on you, what does that tell us about Esau? Baby goats that don't have very much hair? Is that what you're saying? Would be as stiff and hairy as the older goats? Maybe so. That's I would know. You would know. Have you ever had goats on your farm before? Okay. So maybe that's, it did say 2 kid goats, didn't it? 2 kid of the goats. So yeah, that might be part of it too. They'd be softer hair. Okay. But still, that's quite an interesting thing. What's the other thing, smell-wise? Esau's clothes on him, okay? Well, you get the idea that he put it on his hands and on his neck. So at least it would have been on the hands part and neck part. Okay, yeah. All right, so those are all the deceptions here. Now let me ask you, do you think Isaac's been right in what he's doing? Do you think Rebekah's right in what she's doing? Do you think Jacob's right in what he's doing? Do you think Esau's right in what he's trying to receive when he himself knows? Okay? So everybody's in the wrong on this, isn't it? This is a whole family of wrong in some way. Okay? So when Jacob went into Isaac, how did he speak to his father? He lies to him. He tells him that he's Esau and that he's prepared a meal for him and he's ready to receive the blessing. And how come Isaac is surprised at this point when he comes in? There's a few reasons. First is quick. You got here surely quick. Think about it. If you're out hunting, you shoot that deer, but you got to go gut the thing. You got to do all the process of skinning that off, cutting the meat off, cooking the meat. That's not something that just happens in 20 minutes. Huh? And then drag it, yeah, the dragging it home part too. I mean, that's not something that you just have. Now, I don't know what the time frame it was between those. There had to have been a little bit of time, obviously, because Rebekah had to prepare the meat of goats. and so forth. But we're still talking that he was quick. And what does he do to account for why he's there so quick? God did this. Now he's using God to further his lie. God is the one who brought the deer right before me so I could shoot him and get this all worked out. Yeah, he could. There you go. But then the prophecy wouldn't work out right. Okay. Did Isaac believe the report even at that point when he said, "Oh, the Lord gave me this"? Yeah, he sounds still a little skeptical, doesn't he, at this point? And so he asks to feel his son. "Come over here, son, let me feel you." And touches him, and he happens to touch in the right places, and sure enough, he's hairy. And what else does he notice about him? He smells him. You smell like him, and you feel like him, but you got the voice of Jacob. Oh, hush. Now, what does Isaac do just before he gives the blessing to Jacob? Outside of that, there's something else he does. Yeah, there's a kiss that goes on. He brings him over and gives him a kiss. And then he begins to bless him. And let's look at this blessing here again. I said it sounds nothing to do with like what you see the Abrahamic covenant promises being made in any way. It appears completely just to be, you're going to be powerful, you're going to be wealthy, and your brother's going to serve you. I mean, it almost seems to be arrogantly trying to defy the prophecy that was given about them before they'd be born. Doesn't it sound like that? Look, let's look at it. It says, verse 25, he says, "Bring it near to me, and I'll eat my own venison." So he eats. Then he says, "Come near now and kiss me, my son." Verse 27, came near, kissed him, and he smelled the smell of his raiment. Then he goes on, verse 28, "Therefore God give thee of the dew of heaven and the fatness of the earth and plenty of corn and wine. Let people serve thee and nations bow down to thee. Be Lord over thy brethren, and let thy mother's sons bow down to thee. Cursed be every one that curseth thee, and blessed be every one that blesseth thee." Very little said about Abrahamic covenant. And that really, if you watch how the blessings go throughout the line of the children of Israel, it's always it seems to be in tune with some of that promised line, and this doesn't really appear to be that. It appears to be very carnal and fleshly. Now, does it come to pass in his life? Some of this does. Is Jacob going to become very rich? When he comes back from Padan Aram, which we'll see a few lessons later, when he comes back from Padan Aram, he's loaded rich. So God obviously is going to honor this blessing in some sense, but it's not the same sense of the promise that God has been passing down through the people of Abraham and so forth. Okay? Again, I ask the question, was Isaac disobedient at this point to God by what appears to be doing? Yeah, he appears to be contradicting what God has said about the plan for Jacob and Esau. So today, what I want to take some time to look about, two sets of verses I want you to look at. Someone read Romans 3:8, be ready for this one, and Romans 6:1 and 2. And I want to kind of preface, before you read this thought, is it ever right to do wrong to obtain right means? Because we think about Rebekah, God used it. And God brought the blessing, gave the blessing to Jacob, because after all, he's the one that's supposed to be the elder, treated as the firstborn, the one that's going to rule over the younger, or rule over the elder and all of that. This is how it's supposed to work. Does God want us to do wrong just to have the end means to be correct? Have we already seen where Abraham and Sarah have tried to do wrong to make right happen? A few different times, haven't they? And we'll look at that a little bit. And then we see that happening again here. So read verse, if you want to do Romans 3:8, and I need Romans 6:1 and 2. Okay, 3:8. You got see, you'll do 6, 1, and 2. Bill, do you do 3, 8? Go ahead. Okay, he puts a little line in there. I'm not going to give you all the context of that, but that little line makes some sense there. Should we do evil that good may come? Is he honoring that idea? No. Okay. Read this, the next one, Romans 6, 1 and 2, Darla. And again, I'm not going to give you the full context because it's not necessarily applicable, but the thought is, should we do wrong even though we have grace that will cover our wrong? No, we shouldn't say, well, I'm saved, so I can do what I want. I'm still forgiven. It's not the attitude we should have. And in this case here, that is not the attitude that they should have had either. Someone give me some, we don't normally want to talk about what would happen if this had actually happened or that. We're just not, we can't come to that conclusion because we don't know. But give me some thoughts. What probably should have been done? How should have, okay, Isaac, he's not obeying. He's got a stubborn heart. He's obviously demonstrated that. They both have demonstrated that. At this point, maybe let's look from Rebekah's side. What should she probably have done to try to resolve this without just openly deceiving like she did? Huh? Okay, could have just said, God's in control of this. Does he have to fulfill a prophecy that some guy makes? Some kind of blessing that some guy makes? Is he obligated to do so? No, so he didn't have to. That is the line. Yeah, it's kind of hard sometimes to understand this fully, but this seems to work. Okay. Do you think Rebekah may have just said, let's go talk to Isaac? Maybe that could have been resolved. Now, I don't know that it would have. After all these years and years and years of them both being at odds with each other, it's probably one conversation ain't going to solve the problem. Fed him poison mushrooms, okay. What should have Jacob done? What do you think he should have done? I mean, he's not a little boy. He's not a teenager. He said, Mom, come on. Yeah, he should have, but yeah, stood up. I mean, he's not a little boy that he can't say no. He's a man. Yeah. Yeah, that's his nature. In fact, that's when they were going to see when Esau shows up. Wasn't he rightly named Jacob? Did it to me again. Deceived, okay? Now, what should Esau have done? Not try to take something that he already knew wasn't his, and he had already previously sold it. Didn't he? Yeah, he forgot. Are you sure he forgot that? No, he didn't forget it because he'll mention it. He'll mention it that very day. That he's done it to me twice now, Jacob has. Okay. What do you think Isaac should have done? Should have had a heart ready to honor God and do what's right. And this is forever inscripted in the Bible. We're never going to ever not know about this story, about how they literally tried to deceive one another, and it didn't even work out. It didn't even work out. They all tried to twist the means. They all tried to accomplish their own purposes, and it didn't work out. Now, Rebekah, we're going to find out, it doesn't even work out for her in the end. The son that she loves, she ends up losing after this. How's she going to lose him? He has to run away. And he's gone for over 20 years, and by the time he comes back, she's dead. He never gets to see her again. She's got to pay one of the consequences, losing her own son because of what she does. So you get the idea that you just can't do wrong and not have some consequences that are going to come for it. Yep. Yeah, Jacob kind of experienced what went around comes back around kind of thing from his own uncle Laban. You deceived, you've been spending your whole life deceiving everybody. Now you're going to find a trickster that's at your level or higher, and Laban is one of them. Yeah. So maybe that's where Rebecca got it from. They both were that way. Okay. So you get the idea. You just can't do wrong and not have some kind of a consequence for it. And they're all going to face it. They're all going to pay for it in some way. Even Jacob and Esau are going to pay for it together in some way, because they lose that fellowship, and there's this tension that they have to deal with for years. And really, they're going to deal with after their time. Their generations, the people that come out of them, are going to be at odds with each other, really coming down to this very issue, because of the fact that the way God wanted this to happen, they didn't follow the plan, and it brought this kind of clash between these two sets of nations that will come out of those two people. So, all right. Well, let's go on here. Go back to our passage here. I'm going to just kind of skip in here a little bit. Go back to chapter 27. Look at verse number 30 down to verse 46. 30 to verse 46. And we get 30 through 30. Let's do 35. I guess I'm going to give you 6 verses. So if you'll get that one, 30 through 35. 36 through 40. Okay, and then if you want to get 41 through 46, I'll let you hit the last 5 verses there. Subtlety. Subtlety. Tell you how it's. All right, 36. Okay. All right, so the timing of these events here from Jacob just walking out, who just walks in? What is the timing's pretty quick, right? It says he just had scarce left. Boy, how that worked out. How he just got her to sit down and eat a meal, and I'm sure that wasn't fast, and then they'll go through the whole blessing process, and then after that's over with, he walks out, and just as he walks out, who walks in? Esau. And why is Isaac surprised by him bringing a meal? He thought he'd already got one from him, yeah. So the request for a blessing was a surprise, wasn't it? How did Esau identify himself when he said, "Who are you?" I'm your firstborn. I'm Esau. Why is that significant? That he even calls him your firstborn. The one that receives the birthright and the blessing. Yeah. So there's that anticipation. Dad, it's me, your firstborn, the one that you're intending to bless today. If he's got Alzheimer's, he will make sure he snaps him back into it, right? Yeah, who knows? How does Isaac respond? And there's a physical reaction. He trembles exceedingly. Now, anybody want to put that on display, what that would look like? He realizes he has been duped. This is not what I expected it to be. And even he seems to have an apparent understanding that now that he has blessed who he thought he blessed, which now he was realizing is Jacob, he cannot take it back. Once he spoke, it's over with. He can't take it back. And so how does Esau respond to hearing that Isaac had already given the blessing to his brother? Huh? So he breaks down throwing a fit, and then he begs Dad, is there still room for some more blessings? Right? And he wants Dad to give him some kind of a blessing, right? What was probably in Esau's mind as he asked for his father's blessing? What do you think? Well, he actually says something about it. This is the second time he's done this to me. He got my birthright, which, hold on a second. There was no conniving in that one. That was just straight up denying. The Bible actually said he despised his birthright. There was no trickery in the sense of he masqueraded or did something trickery to Jacob in any way. He took advantage of the situation. And the guy showed that he had no real respect for the birthright anyways. Also, he doesn't have any respect for the blessing that usually is associated with the birthright. So, but he said, he got me now twice. He continually keeps tricking me. And then he says, isn't he rightly named Jacob? Which Jacob means, there's a couple different meanings to it. It means hill grabber. That's one of the names because of what he did. But it also means supplanter. That is one who sets traps, one who tries to pull someone down in such a way that they get the advantage. And so that's him. Let's see. Did Esau really expect to lose his birthright and blessing? Do you get the idea that he intended that was really going to happen? No, because he knew who was in his back pocket, who was favoring him. He knew Dad wouldn't allow that to happen, right? But now Dad has been tricked, and Dad has lost what he thought he had as the power to pass this on. So how does Isaac, when he's explaining what's happened, how does he explain Jacob's blessing to Esau? What does he say he's done to him? Well, he says, I have made him lord over his brothers. I think it's interesting he calls them brothers. I don't know if that means intended family that will come after, but there's only two right now that we know of. But the idea is that He's in control. I've made him the master. I've made him the head. He's going to be the guy that receives the firstborn rights. He's going to be the one that has the power of the family and so forth. He's going to receive the wealth of the family. Even then, I blessed him in such a way that he's going to receive all the corn and the wine. He's going to have all the blessing. All of that's under his control, not yours. I can't take that from him. How does Esau feel now that he knows he's lost? Yeah, he's begging for some little bit of blessing. And he does get a blessing, doesn't he? His dad does give him a bit of a blessing here. Let's see what he says. Esau said, Father, hast thou not one blessing of my father? Bless me even also, O my father. Verse 39, and Isaac his father answered and said unto him, Behold, thy dwelling shall be the fatness of the earth, and the dew of heaven from above, and by thy sword shalt thou live, and shalt serve thy brother. And it shall come to pass when thou shalt have dominion, then thou shalt break his yoke from off thy neck. So, yeah, you're going to serve him for a time, but that's not forever. Your family eventually is going to break that off. Okay? And you're going to have the fatness of the earth. You're going to have the dew of heaven. So he's kind of throwing at him that you're going to be a powerful nation too. You're going to be a wealthy nation for a time too. And yes, you'll be for a time under your brother's lordship. How does he feel about it, though, at the end? Because really the kind of blessing he wanted was taken from him. How does he feel? He's going to kill his brother. When Dad dies, he's going to kill him. But Dad doesn't die for another 43 years. So maybe it might wear off. But, they don't know that. Nobody knows that. So who overhears his plans to kill Jacob? She hears again. Man, she's just listening into everybody's plans, isn't she? She's an eavesdropper. And so what does she go tell Jacob that he needs to do? Yeah, you need to run away. Go to live with my brother Laban. You're going to love him. He's such a nice guy. He's going to treat you with such kindness. Yeah. And what is Rebecca, what is her motive or that she throws out here? Yes, sir. Hold on a second here. Hold on. Which verse? Read your verse. And these words of Esau, yeah, so she didn't overhear it in the sense that she heard him, but the plans came to her eventually. Yeah, that's true. Yeah, the plans came to her of what he was doing. So she's heard it somehow. But what is her motive to get Isaac to make him leave? She says another thing to Isaac to get him to leave. Yeah, he needs to go get a wife. And I don't want him to marry one of these Hethites, these daughters of Heth. And they're going to just, I'm already weary with what's happened. Now, has that already happened? Where any of her other boy has married somebody that she's disappointed in? Go look back in chapter 36. Or 26, I'm sorry, not 36. 26, look at verse 34 and 35. Who wants to read those two verses? Real loud, T.J. Judith, Beeri, Hittite, Bashemath, So both Dad and Mom didn't like that marriages arrangement. He's basically a polygamist here, and they're concerned that Jacob doesn't do that. Now, I don't know. I think she is obviously concerned, but she has other motives, really. It's to save her son from dying because Esau's planning on killing him. But she uses that as the means by which Jacob is sent off to go to to Padan Aram. About a 500-mile trek. Yes. Yes. Well, not yet, but that has been demonstrated by Abraham, hasn't it? Because Abraham said that he didn't want Isaac to be marrying one of the daughters of the Canaanites, so we actually, remember we had a whole account about that where he got his wife from family from Haran. It was a cousin, yeah. Everybody marries cousins, okay? We got to get that down. I know that's hard for people to understand, but you marry somebody that comes out of the line of Adam somewhere, distant cousin, hopefully. But you're marrying a cousin, okay? Marrying a relative somewhere. But they don't want to be connected to the people of Canaan. What's the reason why, ultimately? I know that we talked about this a few weeks back. What's the reason why? It could be idolatry, turn their hearts away from the God that they're following, and turn their hearts away from the purpose of the Messiah coming. Now, it appears that this family doesn't even really regard the Messiah too much right now. They're kind of very fleshly and carnal. Can God's people be that way at times? Yeah. So we see that happening here in this play. Okay. I'm run out of time for being able to give you this, but I'm going to hand it out, and I want you to work on it this week. This is yours to do. Bring it back if you want, or keep it. I don't care. I don't know whether I'm going to be able to go over it with you when we get back, because we always run out of time. But take this. This will show you that this is obviously the first time that family members have done wrong in the line of Abraham. And how does God respond to their wrongs? Okay? So if you want to pass those out, one of you guys? Yeah. Just give them out to everybody. So there should be enough for everybody. So, okay, let's finish with some questions here. Number one, how are you encouraged when you read about the failings of people like Jacob and Esau and Isaac and Rebekah? Does that have a bit of an encouraging effect upon us? How does it? I saw that she was just raising for a sheet. Okay.
Because it shows us that we want to be God's people also, and sometimes we make those judgments.
That God's people have in time past already done wrong before. So it helps us not bear maybe an unnecessary weight of guilt to think that we're the first ones to ever make mistakes. Yeah. Okay. And that is good in that sense that we do find out that, I'm thankful. You know what I'm really thankful for? One of the passages in the New Testament I'm thankful for is where Paul talks about in Romans 7 how when he wants to do right, he does wrong. And he's describing, and he goes, "Oh, wretched man that I am, who shall deliver me from the body of this death?" That helps me so often, because I realize how often I struggle with me being who I want to be more like Christ, and I want to live like Him, but yet at times I find myself doing things or saying things or thinking things I shouldn't, and then having to come back and say, "God, please help me to stop being this." Thankful that we see sometimes that there are some not just black and white, but we see some gray from time to time in the lives of people. And God does that through the Scripture, doesn't He? He takes the heroes of the faith and He lets us see them fully for who they are. These Abraham and Isaac and Jacob and the others, we're going to see as we keep going further, we're going to see David, we're going to see Solomon, we're going to see Samuel has some problems. So you get what I'm saying? These are people that we look to as our faith heroes, yet they all had their marks of fallenness, didn't they? We're all born sinners. Okay, second one here. Ends justify the means. That little phrase there. While there can be some cases where we see a happy end for doing this, should that be the way we live? Ends justify the means? No. That's not biblical, and in the sense of biblical or right. Let me say it that way. That's not righteous living. It might be, you can find it in the Bible, but it's not an example to follow. You get what I'm saying? Okay. Rebekah knew that God had made a promise to the son she favored. Rather than waiting on God, she took matters in her own hands. When do you find it difficult to trust God and wait on His timing? When He hasn't come again? Okay. I think that'd be everybody struggles with that, waiting for that, yeah. Has anybody ever been guilty of trying to speed up God's plan or make God's plan happen in your life? Yeah, help out God because He needs your help, because He's not able to do it for you. Or maybe God wants you to do this, and you know in the depths of your heart that's not true. Yeah, I'm trying to make this thing happen. Well, or justify it because look at what He's doing. And I'm sure that's what, if Rebecca had any God consciousness at this point, was thinking about what does God want me to do, she was trying to override that by saying, but look at what Isaac's doing. Look at how he's continually gone the wrong way. So I'm justified in doing what I'm doing. Right? Is that right? Maybe God made her do that. No, there's consequences for what she did. Okay, next one. Part of being God's image bearers is to reflect the character of God to others around us. If we practice deception, what will others think of the God we represent? That He's a deceiver, right? Or it might just turn people away from your God. How many people have heard people say this? If I would be a Christian if it weren't for all those hypocrites. Anybody ever said that? Those people who say they love Jesus, but look at how they're living. Right? So you represent. We had last Sunday night, Annie came and visited the church on Sunday night, and she came because of seeing somebody in the church out in just public. Fred, and me and Fred were talking about it. Is that you never know who's watching. You never know who's watching. So just be a good testimony. All right, here we go. In what ways can we learn from the negative examples of favoritism displayed in this passage? What ways can we learn from the negative example of favoritism displayed in this passage? Fred. Causes more pain than it helps. Yeah. Any others? You love equally. Love is not, it doesn't get split up. Love is unending, right? If we have biblical love, it doesn't, I only have this amount of love and I'm going to give it to this. That's not how it works. You can have as much love for everybody the same, can't you? And biblical love doesn't look at how somebody lives or behaves or acts. That's not biblical love, because if that was biblical love, if that's God-type love, then none of us could be saved. Right? Because none of us are worthy of His love, are we? So, showing favoritism is not love in the strictest sense. It's really hatred and selfishness. Yep. Yeah, you're right. Yeah. Not everybody's able to do the full job. Yep. It's true. Okay, one more. How do we connect the sins of deception and favoritism that we have seen in these chapters of Genesis with the truths of the gospel? So tell me, you want to explain to somebody this passage in the Bible, how could you jump it to the gospel? How would you do it? God forgives sins. Okay. Can't buy or earn your way to heaven. Well, they cheated. They're way into blessing. How about this? Is that there are consequences for sin, one. And two, God actually uses this sin and this behavior to get Jacob away from that family, ultimately for the purpose of setting him apart for, I know this isn't fully in the lesson here, it's next week's, getting him set apart so he understands what he's called to be. And after he leaves, he's going to be gone for a while, and he's going to come back, and his name's going to be changed. Anybody know what his name's going to be changed to? Israel. And the reason why it's changed to Israel is God says, your name is Jacob, but you're no longer a Jacob, you're an Israel, and Israel means a prince with God. There's something has changed in you. You're no longer the deceiver, but you're a prince with God. And so sometimes God can override the evils of men, the selfishness of men, or use it to bring about calling people to Himself. I would say in my heart's thoughts of these people, they're not genuine. They might be genuine believers, but they sure aren't living it out very well by the way they're acting. And there's times where God has to just pull them aside and really single them out and say, hey, you need to remember what this is about. This isn't about your physical desires and your blessings and your physical possessions and all that. So this is about a greater purpose than this. Huh? Yeah. Yeah. They make their judgments. Yep. Yeah. All right. Well, let's go ahead and close in prayer, and we'll come back in about 15 after and for service. Okay. Dear Lord, thank you for being good to us. We thank you for a time of studying in your word, and we do pray that you will use this to help us to make some application in our own life of how you operate and work in the lives of your people, and how your goal and purpose is always to bring about the coming of the Messiah, His kingdom, and the saving of souls. We thank you for loving us. In Jesus' name, amen.